again, garden friends. I hope your new year is going well. I feel like it's been forever since I've done one of these longer format videos, because it has, but it was a well-needed break. I'm feeling much more refreshed and really excited about this year's garden. So today I need to finish doing some winter sowing, but I also wanted to kind of take you around my plant, it's not really a room, plant space, and just kind of show you some of the indoor things I have going on right now and will have going on in the next few months. So this area, which is now my plant space, was sort of an unused part of our walkout finished basement. It was just kind of an awkward area. It's about 8 by 20 feet that we weren't using for anything, but it's nice because the door to our back patio is right off this area. So I just figured this would make a great place to be able to bring in my cold sensitive container plants and to start seeds over the winter. So we ripped up the carpet, we laid down the vinyl wood planks, and that's been really nice because I do occasionally spill water, or when I'm seed starting I make a mess, and that type of flooring is really easy to clean up. So this has just been a really great space that wasn't used before and now is very, very much used by me over the winter. And the light in this space, which isn't great right now because I have the shades closed, but it gets pretty good light. It gets a lot of west facing sun, and there's five windows in this area. So I still have to utilize grow lights on a lot of my larger container plants, but for the most part, this space is pretty well lit. Now, I did recently have to say goodbye to 2 of my larger container plants, which is kind of a bummer, but also did allow me a lot more space in this area. The first was my plumeria, and I, in the summer, absolutely love this plant. The blooms are so beautiful and so fragrant, but it practically doubles in size almost every year. It's super top heavy, the wind blows it over all the time, the branches break off. And so I've just been on the fence about whether I was going to keep this plant, mainly because of the space that it takes up when I have to bring it in over the winter. And I was having to heavily prune it to be able to even get it in the door. And I am a firm believer that if you are not getting 100% enjoyment out of a plant, there's no reason that you should keep it. So the original plan was to rehome this plant to someone else. The other plant was a calamon and orange tree, and I am pretty bummed about this one. I've had this plant, I think, for almost 8, maybe even 9 years. And again, I do get fruit off this plant, but they're very small oranges. They're not really edible like raw. You can use them to make marmalade. But again, beautiful blossoms, very fragrant in the summer, and I've just had it for a really long time. But it didn't look great these last several years. I tried a few things to see if I could get it healthy again. I haven't been getting much fruit off of it. And what finally made the decision for me on both of these plants is that we returned home from a trip, and I had a huge spider mite infestation on both of them, despite doing multiple treatments before I brought them in. And if you've had spider mites before, especially on indoor plants, you know how much of a pain it is to get rid of that infestation. And I could see that it was actually spreading to some of my other plants that I really, really did want to keep. And normally I am happy to rehome plants to people who want them, but because the orange tree wasn't doing very well to begin with and they both had such a bad outbreak of spider mites, I decided to just go ahead and get rid of those. As someone whose plants are my babies, it really pains me sometimes to do this, but it's a lesson that I've learned over the years that, again, if a plant isn't bringing you joy or it's just having repeated issues despite intervention, then it's just sometimes best to let those plants go. So let me take you around the space and show you what I do have growing and show you something brand new. Here is where I keep container plants that need to be brought in during the winter. So currently I have a Meyer lemon and I have 4 peppers that I'm overwintering. And these black trays that go underneath are actually the trays that go under pet crates. They do a really good job of catching water runoff for larger containers. Even with those 3 large west-facing windows, I still like to keep full spectrum grow lights on them just to give them a little bit of an extra boost, especially this lemon tree, because eventually it will fruit over the winter indoors, so it's going to need a little bit of an extra boost of light. And I use either the clip-on ones or the standing ones. Here are 3 peppers I'm overwintering. I have a Mad Hatter, that's a sweet pepper, and then I have a Sugar Rush Peach hot pepper. This one's actually in its going into its 3rd year. And then I have a rainbow pepper that my father gave me to overwinter, but both of these 2 I grew in my garden. Peppers are perennial plants. You can keep them for several, if not many years. If you're interested to know how to overwinter your peppers, I have a few videos on my page. Right now, I just have one clip-on full spectrum LED light that I've been kind of rotating between the plants. I honestly need to get a few more. And so far, these three are doing pretty well. This rainbow pepper, I don't know if you can see, let me move this grow light. It does have two of the stems that are brown and dry and not making it. So I'll prune these off, but these other two here, you can see the leaves growing. So this one should be okay for this year. But despite me doing a soil drench and a treatment to the actual plant before I brought it in, it has been fungus gnat Armageddon. I don't know if you can see them flying and crawling around. I've been using some diatomaceous earth on the top of the potting mix. That's helped a ton. I've also been using apple cider vinegar traps and the little blue light traps, and that's helped take care of a lot of them, but it still has been a major issue. It doesn't seem to be affecting the plant a lot, but it's just really annoying. Over here, though, I have a chocolate habanero pepper that is not doing well at all. You can see the three stems are very dry and brown. It still has a little bit of green to it. Sometimes if you can just keep the roots alive, it'll kind of send up new growth. But I'm not holding my breath. And for whatever reason, when it comes to overwintering peppers, there's just some varieties that do better than others. So this one may just be a variety that doesn't do well with that type of growing method, or it could just be that it had really bad transplant shock. This plant in the larger blue container is a Meyer lemon. I think I've had it for a year, maybe two, and so far it's doing well, no fruit yet. But this was one of the plants that those spider mites were spreading to, and I really didn't want this tree to suffer because this is one I really want to keep. In fact, that Calamondin orange, when I bought it, was labeled as a lemon tree, and either it was mislabeled or sometimes they'll use a Calamondin tree for the graft, the rootstock and a graft. So it could have been that the rootstock overtook the graft. But either way, it's really the lemon tree that I wanted, so I wanted to make sure that I kept this plant healthy. And over here in the corner, I just have a couple succulents and one tiny little air plant. I'm not huge on succulents, but I do like to have a few just to have something growing over the winter. I do really enjoy my aloe plants though for just a medicinal plant. So I have one larger aloe, a smaller aloe, and then I have, I believe this one is a stone crop, yeah. And then I have the lavender scallops. Over here is something brand new. These are the 3-tier sunlit high-intensity LED grow lights from Gardener's Supply. I just got these for Christmas. I'm so excited. This was a really big upgrade from my previous model. I don't have much on it right now, but I'm getting ready to start my seed starting. So right now I just have a jade plant and I have a little succulent, kind of mixed succulent container. Look at this. Look how leggy these are. I've got to get some lights on these. It's always a joke with vegetable gardeners that we cannot grow houseplants. Either we love them too much because that's how we're used to treating vegetables, or we do what I did and just completely forget about them. The original grow lights I had were still part of this same sunlit series, but they were about half the width and they were 2 shelved and they only had 2 LEDs per hood. There's a couple things that I really like about this sunlight series. The first is that you can raise and lower the hoods. When you're growing seedlings, you really want these lights to be about 1 or 2 inches above the seedlings so they don't get stretched. So this makes it really easy. I also like that the trays can come out of the shelves, which makes cleaning really easy. They're also on wheels, which makes them really easy to move. I can pull these out and clean really easily behind the grow lights. And the reason these are called high intensity is because they have 3 LEDs per hood. If you're interested, I'll link this model and the model that I grew on previously down below. There's a couple other versions and sizes in the Sunlight series as well. Now, were these very expensive? Yes. Can you DIY your own grow light setup? Absolutely. I consider these an investment. Does every gardener need to have grow lights this big? No. I grew on grow lights that were about 1/3 of the size of this, maybe even 1/4 of the size, successfully for many years. And on those smaller grow lights, I grew enough plants to fill my 15 raised beds. However, I am a master gardener. I grow seedlings for the master gardeners and also for the community. I also now grow a lot of seedlings for friends and family. So for me, it made sense to have bigger grow lights. And that is my little plant space. It's not huge, but it works really well for what I need it to. So now let's get started on some winter sowing. I purchased a small folding table to put up during the winter for projects like winter sowing or for seed starting. It's easy to clean, it's easy to store, and that way during the summer when I don't need it, I can easily put it away and have more space in this area. Today, like I said, I'm going to be finishing up my winter sowing. If you're unfamiliar what winter sowing is and want some more details, I did make a whole video on this. I will link it below. But in a nutshell, we're going to be planting seeds in these containers, closing them back up, placing them outside, and they're going to kind of act like little mini greenhouses. And when temperatures inside the containers are high enough, the seeds will germinate. And what's nice about growing things this way is that the seedlings don't have to be hardened off before transplanting, and they're usually pretty strong seedlings because they've been grown outdoors. Now, I always get a lot of questions on, will this work in really cold climates like up north? Yes, it's just that the seeds will take longer to germinate. So I'm planting these now. They may not germinate until probably late March, and I'm mostly growing cool season veggies and perennial flowers. They won't germinate right away. We're just kind of waiting until that soil gets warm enough so those seeds can germinate. But having them in these containers will allow them, will trap heat and allow them to germinate a little faster. As far as supplies, I have my containers. I like to use gallon jugs, and you don't want to use the opaque ones. You want these that are fairly clear so that the light can get in. We're actually not huge milk drinkers, so I get a lot of jugs from my friends and family. My dad gives me his sweet tea jugs, so that's where I get these. And I'm reusing these. Some of these are going on 3 years, I think, which is why they have some old labels on them. But you can also use pretty much just any clear container. You can use clear the takeout or like the leftover containers. You can also use those as well. You just wanted to make sure they're about I would say at least 5 inches deep. You want at least 3 or 4 inches of growing medium inside those containers. And then I also have a garden marker. Don't use a Sharpie because it will fade in the elements. These last a long time. You can see these labels have been exposed to a lot of winter weather for several years. They're on just fine. I also like to use clear packing tape. You can use duct tape. I just like to let as much light in as possible. I have my potting mix. Now, I've been trying to reuse as the prices of things go up. I try to reuse things like potting mix. You can use a seed starting mix. I would stay away from like moisture control potting mixes. They're just going to retain too much water for young seedlings. But I recently repotted a bunch of succulents. So I have this potting mix that's for succulents. So it has a lot of the perlite in it, which means it's going to drain really well. And then I just have some older potting mix from Healthy Plants that I threw in here. I'm going to be amending it with a little bit of worm castings just to kind of refresh it. And I did go through and pick out any of the big chunks of organic material. I just want a nice kind of fluffy mix for these seeds. And I also have my seeds, so let me show you what I'm growing this year. My favorite things to grow using the winter sowing method are cool season vegetables and cool season annual flowers. I also like using this method for perennial flowers because it's a great way to cold stratify perennial seeds that need it. Now, you can grow warm loving plants like tomatoes or summer annual flowers using the winter sowing method. They'll take a little bit longer to germinate because they need higher temperatures. For where I live, I prefer only doing cool season or cool loving plants because we get a lot of warm up, cool down, warm up, cool down. We get late frosts in the spring, and so I worry about those warmer season things like peppers and tomatoes being able to withstand a frost, even though these containers do protect them very well. I just don't worry about it as much with these cool season plants. And I prefer to grow things like tomatoes and peppers indoors. They just do a little bit better under more consistent growing conditions. So by doing the winter sowing method for some of these cool season things, it saves me a lot of space. The first thing I'm planting is spinach. Spinach does really well in cooler temperatures. In fact, I grow this under cover in my cold frame year round in my area. This is Bloomsdale. It's a variety I have grown several times. I have 2 different kinds of lettuce. I have Milagro, which I completely spilled water all over. Hopefully these seeds will be okay. I also have some Easy Park MTO. I grew this last year. It's a really, really good variety of lettuce. I also have some Luna broccoli that I'm going to be starting this way, and I have some Santos cilantro. These were originally from Harris Seeds. I saved my own seed from these last year. I'm actually not starting any perennial flowers this year, but I do have quite a few cool season or cool tolerating annual flowers that I'm growing, and most of these will just be used to fill out my pollinator beds and also planted as companion plants in my vegetable garden. First, I have Bells of Ireland. I have only ever started these indoors. I'm going to try this winter sowing method on these this year as well. I absolutely love these for cut flowers and cut flower arrangements. They make a really beautiful filler. Then I have some poppies. Again, this is another one that I have not tried growing using winter sowing. I'm going to see how they do. You just kind of have to experiment with winter sowing. There's just, especially with flowers, there's just some that do well with it and some don't. So I always try to add a couple new varieties each year, as well as some tried and trues. So we'll see how these goes. I absolutely love poppies, so hopefully these take. Then I have some Cleome and some cherry caramel phlox. Both of these I'll just use as fillers in my pollinator bed, maybe a few of them in my vegetable garden as well. And last, I have two annual flowers that are great for companion planting in a vegetable garden, calendula and nasturtium. Calendula is great for pollinators. It's also a medicinal plant if you like growing things for that. And nasturtium is not only a beautiful plant, it's an edible plant, but it makes a great trap crop. It's really attractive to a lot of different pests, but it handles pest damage really well, and that means those pests are eating this and not your vegetables. And when it comes to planting, I just sort of follow the directions and what that plant likes. Some of them like to be sown just on the surface. They need some light. Some need to be planted a little bit deeper. And as far as how many I plant in each container, again, it just sort of depends. So a lot of the salad greens or the smaller flowers, I'll go ahead and plant upwards of 10 because I can thin them out or separate them later. For the larger ones like the nasturtium or the broccoli or the cilantro, a lot of times I will plant 4 to 5. And then again, I'm just going to be separating and transplanting these later. Okay, winter sowing is finished. Now I just need to go put these outside. I like to place my containers in a sunny spot out in my garden, and all I have to do is just periodically check on the containers and make sure that potting medium isn't drying out. And that's it. Thanks so much for joining me today as I did a mini tour of my plant room and finished some winter sowing. Again, more information on those grow lights and that complete winter sowing guide will be linked below. Don't forget to also follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest, where I post beginner-friendly garden videos. Now I'm off to get cleaned up. I've got date night planned with the husband, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.